What's up, people? Welcome to Spending Plan 101 series. This is week 5. And today we're going to move forward and start putting our plan together by getting the categories for our spending plan. So let's talk about the outline. So we'll start off with a quick review of last week, talking about finance and relationships. We won't stay on that too long. We'll talk about the categories because your homework assignment from last week was to put together categories. I'll show you mine. Hopefully you have yours and we can kind of compare notes. Hopefully they line up. I'll show you a sample spending plan of one we'll do together. Still working through how to make it done in 10 minutes or so or less on YouTube, but we'll figure it out and we'll do it together in the weeks to come. I'll give you a homework assignment, of course, summarize what we did today and give you a sneak peek for next week. So last week we talked about The 7 Money Mantras by Michelle Singletary. It's a good read, and how the book is broken into 2 parts. The first part of the book is talking about the 7 money mantras, and from there she talks about some just general finance basics. And once we got into finance basics, we kind of used that to branch off talking about relationships. And the first kind was, spousal kind of relationships. And one of the things we kind of said was, as many of you know, most of marriages, or 50% of marriages, end in divorce. But the majority of those that end in divorce do so. The number one reason for divorce is financial related issues. And a lot of that's due to 3 things. The first of which is talk about the management or mismanagement of expectations financially. How people are oftentimes aren't honest with themselves and their spouse. Talking about how you ought to share your credit report before you get married. It's not to say a spender can't be with a saver, but you just need to know what you're getting into. And then don't start anything you can't keep up. This is regards to, putting on a false image. If you come out there and you start spending all this money and then you get married and all of a sudden you're cheap because you really couldn't afford to do all the things you were doing before, you need to be aware of that. Don't start anything you can't keep up, because no one goes into a relationship thinking their life is going to be worse. So just those types of things. And then for those of us who aren't married, those of us who are single and dating or courting, whatever you want to call it, or just in general have relationships with people who are family members and friends, how do we show our affection for these people who we really care about, but at the same time be conscious of our pocketbook? And one of the things he talked about in the book, many of us know that giving gifts is one way of showing our affection, but there are a few things we need to be aware of. And the first of which is, I thought was very, very, very important, I'll say it again, is the price tag of your gift is not a yardstick of your affection. Just because someone spends a lot of money on you doesn't mean they care about you. Just because someone doesn't spend a lot of money doesn't mean they don't care either. It's not a measure of your affection. How it's important, and Michelle talked about in her book, that you communicate clearly with family members and friends, letting them know ahead of time that you're not going to be spending an extra amount of money on them. And again, it's not a measure of affection for them. It's just you're conscious of your spending plan and you have things you need to do financially. Because again, going back to last time, I talked about the analogy that people in general in the United States spend 6 months paying off debt they incurred or accumulated during the Thanksgiving, Christmas holiday season. And of course, I think I raised my hand and had a little testimony to the brothers telling them how it's important to be creative and thoughtful, that it's advantageous that you do those types of things versus just using your money to show and express yourself or your affections to someone else. So that I'm done. I'm not going to talk about finance and money anymore. So today we're going to get into the categories, and I've outlined about 14 here that you can see next to me. One of these, I'll figure out where I'm going to put myself, but yes, it's near me. And talking about, of course, you should know what your income is. Talking about the importance of charity. You got to pay the I to the R to the S. That's the IRS, the government. You got to pay them their money. You have to save. You have to invest. And you have to pay back your debt. There are 3 certainties in life, I think. There's death, there's taxes, and debt. More likely, you will experience those 3 things at some point in time. The importance of housing, transportation, insurance, having insurance, personal needs, like, y'all can see me, I'm looking like Wolfman here. Getting a haircut. And I'll do that this week. So next week, y'all see me, I won't look like so much like Wolfman. But, I'm living within my means, okay? Medical, is really important. It's kind of relates to insurance. But for those of you who know, been watching, pay attention to politics, health insurance reform was recently passed. So now you absolutely have to have health insurance. So this is something you need to account for in your plan. Family expenses, talking about, having, gifts and toys and, if you have to take child support, anything like family expenses, vacations, all sorts of things there. Entertainment. How are you going to entertain yourself? You want to have a good time. You need to be doing those types of things. Have that included in your plan. And then professionally, are you getting the development you need? Are you a dues paying alumni member? Are you networking? These are things you need to incorporate such that you can do better and move up that corporate ladder or whatever it is, so you can be a better professional. So that's that. But let me show you very briefly the plan we're going to make together in these coming weeks. Once I figure out how to do it in less than 10 minutes on YouTube. Ignore this little message here. This is my Mac trying to be safe. As you can see, so here's the spending plan. Again, I forgive me for using the B word, but I just want to be very clear so you know what it is. And you can kind of see how these categories work. And then one of the things I really want you to note is how in many of these categories there are a lot of other things. It's not just housing is lumped together. There are a lot of little things you need to account for, like, if you have a house, you have to pay property taxes, insurance, a loan, association dues, and real estate, and all maintenance. Same thing with car maintenance and auto replacement fund. You need to be accounting for it. Like, one of the things that always cracks me up, people are surprised my car broke down. Like, that's what cars do. They break down. You need to be preparing for that. So that's really something important to take into account. And you can see other categories here for entertainment, the medical, family, all that stuff here, and then household. Again, use your notes as things you kind of know because you've been tracking your expenses. Things like, okay, maybe this should go into household versus this should go into housing, whatever you have, make sure you include it in your plan. So let's get back to our presentation. I want to wrap things up. So again, continue to record your transactions so you really understand how much you're spending, where your money's coming from, and where it's going. So what I want you to do is create a sample spending plan document with the categories that we talked about, I showed you, and you made yourself, and put it on pen and paper, just notepad, and kind of organize it so it makes sense to you. It doesn't even make sense to me, it makes sense to you because it's your spending plan. And the other thing I want you to do, I want you to start thinking about what your short and midterm goals are. Okay? So what do we talk about today? We touched on the basics and finance relationships. I told you, I'm done. I'm not saying no more. Get out your business. Okay? I'm out. All right. We talked about the various categories. Not as exciting today, but again, it's really important that you actually have a really sound, thorough, like, where your money's going. Okay? Give you your homework assignment. Again, really go back and start putting the pen on the paper. Make your spending plan, just the categories, figuring those types of things out, structuring it that way. And again, start thinking about, where am I trying to go? What are your short and midterm goals? That's what we're talking about next week. And then the weeks to come, we'll also talk about long range goals. But that's it for today. Really simple. So thanks for your time. I'm TruEngineer. Peace.